Hello, I'm Dale Matthews. Welcome to Inside News, and joining us is Mike Jones. Hello, Mike.
Good evening, Dale. How's it going this evening?
Good. Now, as we promised you, on Tuesday, we were at the Republican gathering where they had invited a bunch of candidates, and we played that for 2 hours. That's done very well. Several times more our normal audience, and people are watching it all the way through for 2 hours. But there are those who would prefer to see a part of it again, or maybe they didn't want to watch the whole thing. And so what we've been doing is we've been playing back the candidates in the order in which they appeared, and having them say their statement, just their statement, and we're not going to comment, and you know why. So right now, I
don't even understand the need to mention that. Let's just start off the top of each show with a clip and move right along.
Well, I don't even have to say hello, but I usually do.
Okay, yes.
Yes, so here is, for 6 minutes, here is Lily Morgan. Lily?
For 6 months.
I don't know if any of you, when you were a kid, ever heard the acronym for the word JOY. Jesus first, others second, and then yourself last. I was raised to put God first, and then my country and those around me, and myself after. Working in public service is a privilege, and it's an honor. The work requires a higher level of responsibility and therefore accountability. I'm intentional to live my life in a way that is an example to others. The values that guide my choice are faith, integrity, truthfulness, honesty, accountability, respect, and responsibility. I believe these values provide a solid foundation from which other values are an outcome and are necessary for bringing positive change into this community. I'm running for County Commissioner in Position 3 because I love this community, which is my home, and I want to keep fighting from it being lost and neglected. For the past 6 years, I have been able to serve as an elected city councilor after a time that was disrupted with a recall and some questionable actions in the city management. While I was serving as a counselor, I worked full-time as a parole officer, and I pursued my master's degree. I've shown that I do have the experience. I'm able to work in a team setting and have integrity while serving, and I want to be your next county commissioner. My key objectives is to have a healthy economy and stable and permanent funding for our criminal justice system. We need to be able to build a business network that the private industry is what is succeeding, not government increasing. And in order to do that, we have to be able to increase the communication with our business community, contacting them when decisions are made and seeing what barriers need to be removed. How can the private partnerships increase? How can they get the job done and the government have transparency through citizen oversight? We need to have an analysis of the county service to see which areas can potentially be put to the voters for privatization. We can increase our harvest of our county forest properties. We also need to evaluate and utilize any county properties that can be leased out for private industry to increase and therefore have revenues that can be put forth towards public safety. And we also need to remove the fee system for the planning department. So when businesses come in to build, there is the opportunity for them to have the services be provided because they're public servants, not because they have to raise a fee to get that job done. And mostly we need to be able to use our natural resources, whether it be minerals in the ground or the trees in the forest. We have to be able to be at the table making the decisions for managing our natural resources and our community lands. I do have experience in law enforcement. I've been the one on the end of the 911 calls when people have called for help, and when a child has died over the phone, I've heard that last breath. I've been a reserve deputy volunteering and responding to emergency calls. I've helped cover shifts in the jail when they were low staffed, and I hold parole and probation offenders accountable through evidence-based practice where we focus on behavior change and public safety. With the city council, we operate at a $100 million budget. Yes, they do tax greater in the city, but they also have asked for those services, and we've managed that. But we've also made some hard decisions. I was not a pushover, as I was told my first year on budget committee, and I held the city accountable for decisions. I voted no when the fee system on our water bills was going to be extended because we said we would sunset it, and on the principle of it, we should have ended it. I voted no on the sales tax because I thought it would hurt our businesses and our community. We have taken on some difficult tasks when housing requirements put HUD into the community of Maple Park. We voted no and supported the community business owners. We created ordinances to hold panhandlers and people accountable for stopping traffic and said, if you want to help, pull off the street. There were items that were held over for years. The urban growth boundary hadn't been updated in 8 years, and we got that done. We were the first council in a long time to give taxes back. We closed the redevelopment agency 7 years after it was supposed to expire, and we gave tax money back to the county and the schools where it was going. There's businesses that have tried to come into our community and were blocked by bureaucracy, and that's unacceptable. Home Depot had been trying for 10 years to get completed, and we were able to wrap that deal up by lowering some costs for them, and we have a store in place. First Community Credit Union brought a $6.5 million building project in and 20 new jobs in our community, but it was going to be stopped. We helped get that done. By reducing and eliminating system development charges, we have new businesses in Winco. Red Robin is coming. A new Taco Bell opened. There's a new DHS building, All Care, and the People's Bank. When it comes to our economy, you may ask, why does the city matter when it comes to the county? Because every resident of the county, whether they live in the city or in the rural areas, pay county tax. And as an assessed value goes up, as a business builds and increases, that is increased income to the county as well. And the city has most of the location of the jobs. And so if there's people living in the county and they want to have jobs, there are some that are in the rural areas, but there's others in the city. So we have to be able to partner with getting the regulations in the city out of the way for business to grow. We have to allow the county to focus on the areas that they can produce in Murphy and Merlin and Cave Junction areas. And we need to allow our forests and our mining operations to be utilized to the best of their ability.
Okay, so Mike, this evening, following that, I'm going to play now what I think is probably one of the most important little clips that we've seen on this show in a month. And this has to do with Cheryl Walker's opinion about this advisory question, 3453, the one that they scrapped. I think because they got this letter from SOS saying, please, don't do this. You don't even need to ask the people's opinion. Just do it. Why are you asking people? Why are you putting this up for a vote? So this clip, pay close attention to this, folks. This tells you everything that you need to know about whether this was just an advisory question or this is a scheme to call in the governor and get extra money for the commissioners and take away your power. Here's the clip, and you tell me what you think about it, and Mike and I will comment. Here we go.
If this were put on the November election, that would be somewhat late, because it's my thought here, having had experience with the legislature, that the governor is going to have to put that in his or her proposed budget for next year, which is pre-session. And pre-session means in the fall. They usually have those pre-session bills. They're starting to formulate that in the fall before they start the session in January. So the earlier the better to get it into the governor's budget so that the governor can shepherd it through the legislature so that when the session ends, it's in the funding budget.
Mike, the earlier the better.
Yeah, this leaves little ambiguity about her plans.
Brother.
Yeah, right. And which she's trying to telegraph that's going to be, or soon. She's trying to, this is Walker's little devious plan, because the entire city council charged her with the responsibility of saving them and the entire county from the scourge of the citizenry who doesn't want a tax levy. And so that's what this whole 3453 push is. And, Jay Meredith helped out tremendously in that regard. Oh, right. I've just gotten absolution from a grassroots citizens group to go around the voters and go directly to the governor with our state of emergency, which of course, we have yet to hear how is that quantified. Show me the graph that shows the emergency that we're dealing with here right now.
Well, we've watched Facebook so that you don't have to go and do that. And I have not seen a single instance, maybe Mike has, of somebody saying, oh, just relax, it's just an advisory question. I've seen several instances of people saying, yes, we should pull the trigger immediately. We should have the governor come down here immediately. Think of all that money. And oh, so what if they would take over some stuff? Why? We need the money, the money, the money, the money. And it's just like and I approve, some people say, of the governor forcing this on us. There was a letter to the editor today in the Courier from a guy saying, the people won't vote for this, and so we should force them to do it.
Well, and listen, in conversations that took place after at the Meet the Candidates night, there was conversations that took place after. Dan DeYoung made the case that, well, what about the other 47% who didn't vote for it? Where's their services? These people are living in. Well, they're making the case for the losers is the problem. And, we have always done it this way where, if there's going to be a tax increase and this is something that's put on the ballot, you don't, when people lose, and listen, he brought up the point that everybody was free to pitch in, and he was one of the few who did. And congratulations. And more of you people, if you feel as though the sheriff's department is getting shorted, cut your check. Nobody's stopping you.
Well, one of the people in the audience also said to Dan DeYoung, sorry, Mike, one of the people said, hey, listen, if you won by one vote to be a city councilor, would you ask for the whole thing to be revoted? Because, it really wasn't.
Yes.
I don't think so.
Which is an excellent point, but it's also exactly the point that Dan DeYoung was making when he was griping about these 47% not getting the services they wanted. What you going to do about that? Oh, well, maybe you should hit us with half of the amount of that levy since, there was 47% of them, and if there was 48%, well, maybe then we'd have, 51% of the leviers. This is people insiders inside local government want only one thing, more of your money. And there's only one way that they're going to get that, and that is to either tax you or to get the big man outside to come in with his hammer and sickle and take it from you. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And I just think we better watch these people. Specifically, Cheryl Walker wants to do this. And you know what? The other two commissioners, Simon Hare, Keith Heck, if you're watching this, this is what's being pushed through. Are you in favor of this? If you're not in favor of this, then you better show that you're not in favor of this. Otherwise, it's pretty clear you are in favor of this kind of tactic. And darn well, it's been proven on a number of occasions that you cannot substantiate the case for a fiscal emergency. You don't have the money that you want, but we don't have a crime crisis. So get off of it. So you better substantiate it in some other way. I'm waiting.
Now, we talked last night about this crime, this rash of trashing and stealing small stuff over in Illinois Valley, and I pointed out that if we had in the county the same amount of law enforcement people dedicated to that small area, that we'd have to have 820 sheriff's deputies, with the sheriff being number 821. That's pretty good coverage for that little area of Cave Junction, and they pay for it separately. That guy is dedicated to working for them.
Right. And I think part of the problem is that the guy isn't there enough, even though they pay for him. He apparently, there is some beef, and I don't know the absolute specificity on this, but that he is not there as much as he is contracted for.
They're not there all over the county, and never have been. And when you call in from outside, I live in the city, but when you call in from out, it's been this way for over a decade. You call, hey, well, we'll send somebody out, kind of like one of these days.
Yeah.
Kind of.
However, when you're, an incorporated city here and you're paying for law enforcement, that's what they're paying for, law enforcement. That's supposed to be their contract deputy. And now, listen, if it's hitting the fan in some other part of the county, I totally get why they need to take the guy and take him out somewhere else. But if it isn't, he certainly ought to be there. And if we can put what a great thing that they have exposed us to this idea that you can get people for law enforcement for a heck of a lot cheaper than what they pay for their regular deputies. Why don't you put a couple of these retired guys out there and give them 2 for 1, for crying out loud, if you really care about cutting the crime down. And then not only that, this one contract deputy, I'm assuming that you get one shift out of that. So for 8 hours out of 24, you got one guy there. Well, why can't you increase and have 3 people in a rotation and cover it around the clock? And that way you have somebody to respond to any one of these things at any given time. Plus, listen, the people in Illinois Valley have shown that they're willing to step forward and assist in patrolling and and reaction when a crime takes place. They've had a whole team down there that shows up armed.
Cheryl Walker disagrees with you. Here's what she said on Wednesday.
I remember over the last 2 to 3 years, people would come in and say, we can't afford to pay for public safety, and I've got my dog, and I've got my gun, and I got an alarm system. We had an alarm system on the Illinois Valley Library. It rang for hours, and no one called 911, the sheriff, or the state police. How it was discovered was a library employee was driving by and heard it in her car, but nobody bothered to call. That kind of apathy. And if you think your neighbor's going to call when your alarm goes off, there's an example. Alarm didn't.
Yeah, the only problem with that is she's saying 3 things are false in one long drag-on sentence. Mike?
Yeah. And she assumes that because, if indeed it was the case that the alarm was ringing for hours, I haven't heard exactly how they know that to be the case. It may well be that it was.
Say no.
Okay, but it may well be logged in the alarm system that it was ringing for hours before somebody got there and shut it off, or it may have logged a specific time when the incident took place. Okay, whatever. The bottom line, do you really believe that the neighbors to that place, if they knew a crime was taking place there, wouldn't call the cops? That's what she's insinuating.
That's exactly what it was. That's right. That's not right. I think she owes them an apology. I don't think those people out there are apathetic about crime in their community. That's what she said. Well, okay. All right. So when commissioners, when there are a number of boards, and the community, there's the Air Force. Yeah, we have an Air Force. Haven't you ever seen it?
Yes.
Black helicopters, right?
It's a stealth Air Force.
Yes, it is that. There are a number of boards like at the Illinois Valley Airport, the airport in Merlin, the Grants Pass Airport. There's the Board of Health, these kinds of things. And typically when the board liaison goes there, it's not required for the board members to go there, but when the liaison goes, they give a report. Now, what they've done in the past was they would go to the Airport Advisory Board and they would give them a report about what's happening in the county that relates to aviation. Well, since Simon Hare came in and it was doubled down with the two new commissioners, they go and they use it as a political platform. They just say, well, here's the wonderful stuff we're doing. And by the way, don't forget to vote for the levy, this kind of thing, whatever month it is that, the new levy is available. So I went to a Board of Health meeting. Sounds really interesting, doesn't it? But I wanted to hear about what they were going to say about tobacco. And the news from that, I don't know if we're going to play the whole thing in the future, but the news from that gathering of the Board of Health is they want to make a new rule. Mike, do you remember the rule that they tried to come up with about smoking near county facilities? Do you remember that one?
No, not specifically, but I'm assuming, you had your setback. It was a certain number of feet from the okay.
Right. And the way they figured it out, if you go from the lawn in front of the courthouse, that you'd actually have to stand in the street in order to be able to smoke. I don't smoke, but still, really.
Oh, so it wasn't from the building, it was from the property the building was located on?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Now, the new rule that the Board of Health is pushing, and Cheryl's behind it, yeah, and Ken Hannum was there, not Daryl Hannah. Stop saying that. Ken Hannum was there from the city, and they were pushing real hard for the idea that you cannot smoke even when you're sitting in your car on any county property. Now,
okay.
My first thought was, well, they're probably talking about a county parking lot. Oh, no. How about a county park? You've parked at a county park and Grandpa wants to smoke. Can't do that under this rule.
Well, there's your crime crisis right there.
Right.
All these hundreds of people smoking in their cars at the county parks. We got to put a stop to that.
In their car. Okay. Or at the fairgrounds. Okay. You're not getting out and walking around exposing it. You're not exposing anybody to your smoke at all. But if you're sitting in your car smoking at the fairgrounds, that would be illegal in your car with the windows rolled up.
Well, and this is what happens, and it's proof that our government is not being kept small enough here in this local area. When you allow government to get bigger, it finds more and more stuff to put its hands into. What you're smoking in your car, or that you're smoking in your car, unless you're on fire, that should be none of their business.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because Mark Seligman called me today and he was saying, what would you do in the following case? And I listened to Mark and he says, so let's suppose that you went to a parking lot of Winco and there was a dog and it was a hot day and the dog is panting. Would you, one, go in and tell the store, hey, this dog is in respiratory arrest or whatever? Would you call the police on your cell phone, or would you break the window and rescue the dog? And I definitely would.
That's one of those ones where, they're, which, depending on how you ask that question, or how you answer that question, you're either a horrible person or you're a wonderful, individual.
But there was a second shoe to drop on that one. So now if you're sitting in a county park or at the fairgrounds and you're smoking, so someone is going to come and break your window and rescue you from this smoke-filled car because you were smoking illegally. Really?
Yeah.
Would you just please stay out of our lives? You're in a car. The windows are rolled up. What are you doing? Do you have nothing better?
I don't see these two things as being analogous at all. One, you have a human being who has control over themselves, and if they are in distress in some way, they can certainly open the door or roll down their window or stop smoking or whatever the heck it is. And now a dog in a car is a different thing, and there are varying things on that. You know,
I agree.
If somebody's inside Winco, I certainly would either run into Winco and ask them to announce on the PA that somebody's dog's in distress in this particular car. I would think instead of breaking somebody's window out. Now, if the dog is obviously dying or something, that's totally
different
degrees here. You know,
that's right. It literally degrees. Okay, so. Yeah. So here's Cheryl Walker at the Board of Health giving her unrelated commissioner's report. And so we're going to do what we excel at on this show. We're going to play it back and laugh and play it back and laugh. Here we go.
This time of year, we're getting ready for our budget process. The board right now is working on goal setting. We have a draft that we've been working on for a couple of weeks. I submitted it 2 weeks ago originally, and then had some feedback on the goal setting. And we've already put the directives out to the different departments as to prepare their budgets. I have reviewed a preliminary budget with one of my liaison departments. I haven't reviewed one with Diane yet because it's not required at this time, but we're just trying to get started on it. We're going to try to consolidate some of the budget hearings this year because they've always been, kind of drug out over several weeks, which takes a lot of people's time. And these people are volunteers; they're on the budget committee, so we're trying.
Now, what is she now saying? What did she just say?
She was blathering on about dragging out budget committee stuff over a couple of weeks. That's what I heard.
So typically the way the budget committees work, and these are arguably the most important meetings of the year when they're deciding the magical budget and where the money's going to go. Do you remember when Peggy Goodwin was talking about let's give the sheriff more money? And they said, oh, no, we can't possibly do that. Well, what about this money that came in that you weren't expecting? Oh, no. So, all right. So Cheryl said what happens with the budget meetings is that they usually take place once or twice a week for a couple of weeks. Now, last time they only had, as I recall, 2 or 3 of these, and they were just rubber stamping it all. And they chose which department heads they wanted to come in and say, please explain to me, what are you doing with the vehicles and why are we hiring so many people? Her plan, as she's saying now, is they're going to cut that back so that it's not going to last, let's say 3 meetings. What is it going to be? Just 1? Just exactly how are they going to condense all that when it goes from it used to be like 7 and then it was like 5 and people could ask questions. Gee, can't have that. And then it got down to, and I was at one of them where Keith Heck was not a commissioner. He was in charge of the whole thing. And I got up and started asking a question. I know what you're going to ask. And he made me sit down. He was chair.
Yeah, that just seems like it facilitates, the lesser meetings. They forces these people to hurry up and go through all this stuff without greater examination and probably hold tighter to whatever agenda is being laid out there. Now, I'm wondering who's on the budget committee, and I don't know. And if you do know whether or not Margaret Goodwin is going to be on the budget committee again, please let me know. You know who?
The answer is yes. Yes, she's going to be on the budget committee again. They're appointed for a while. As it turns out, Margaret Goodwin, Peggy Goodwin, is the only person on the budget committee that's not super pro-levy. There are 6. 3 of them are commissioners. And
not exactly representative of the voting public, is it?
They are not. So if you pick, not me, but 2 fiscal conservatives, then it will be evenly balanced. It'll be Peggy Goodwin, fiscal conservative 1, fiscal conservative 2, Simon Hare, and more of the party insiders. It is a very important meeting.
Don't the commissioners appoint the board, or
Yes.
or don't they appoint these people that are sitting on this committee?
Yes.
You know, I mean, you can put whoever you want in there, which clearly they have, and they have, you know, feigned balance by putting Peggy Goodwin on there.
Right. And, well, one example is, remember the guy that was up in front of the church when we were all being called Satan worshipers because we weren't following authority? And he was answering questions about why you should vote for the levy? Jim Brumbach. He's on the budget committee. Pat Fahey of SOS on the budget committee. He's not now, but yeah, he was. So why don't they just take Jay Meredith and put him on and make him the only member of the budget committee, and then he'll figure out how we can turn the whole thing over to the governor.
Yeah. Well, seems like he's working on the agenda, whether, you know, he's employed to do so or not.
We are paying him, so he's employed by us. Oh, geez, don't get me started. But look, the important thing is here, to me, these meetings of the budget committee are super important. It's the one chance, really, where people can look over and see what the heck is going on and ask questions about this. I asked at one of them, well, Simon Hare says the sheriff is padding his budget. You, as members of the budget committee, do you care about that? Padding the budget committee? Crickets in the corner, buddy. They weren't interested in talking about it or even considering it. So it's an important thing, and the idea, I know it sounds boring, but the idea of cutting this back to less public input, more rubber stamping, this is not a good thing, in my opinion. Okay, more of Cheryl Walker explaining her entire reason to exist to the Board of Health.
To consolidate some of that so it doesn't take so much time from our volunteers on the budget committee, as well as our department people that have to show up at the hearings. So we're getting ready for all that right now. The general goals that we're getting ready to do will be general goals we'll put out to the county, but these are board goals, things we want to accomplish. They actually do involve some of the departments, and we're trying not to put any burdens on the departments, but we're trying to be more efficient in what we do and how we target our time. Speaking of time, we try to do, over the last 3 years, we've had the goal to try to incorporate more technology into our processes. And I have seen that as a huge improvement in a lot of our departments. And we had John McCafferty that we put in our IT. And I just got the note this morning that we'll be fully going to the WET system as of March 6th, I believe it was.
Sorry, I just have to insert here. We're fully going to the what system? What? Yes. The what system? What? Yes. It seems like an old Abbott and Costello routine. The what system? Yes. What system? Yes. Sorry.
And so that will eliminate a lot of the costs that we have been incurring in regards to the regular telephone systems that we have. Once we'll be using the internet and going over using our computer system more than using telephones. Will cut down a lot on the maintenance and cost of replacement of equipment.
Now, okay, so just a second. Mike will know more about this than I. Mike, they're going to go over entirely. They're not going to have POTS, plain old telephone service. They're going to go over to talking on the telephone through the internet. So my question to you, sir, is if there's
Voice
some
over
kind
IP.
Right, voice over IP, VoIP. If there's some kind of earthquake, which they're saying, hey, this is kind of come here immediately, and then we're going to need all the road funds. If that happens, what happens to all of our telephone services and all of our emergency coordination if we're doing it, all of it, through the internet?
Yeah, that's gonna be tough if that infrastructure is down. It's gonna be awfully tough to do it. You'll have cell phones if those towers are up. You'll have radio systems for those of us in the county who are hams. You know that there's a very good repeater coverage in the county, and that's long been depended on for emergency services should they arise. But they're going to be. But who knows what takes priority in terms of getting it back up and running? The internet or telephone service. And nowadays, I mean, that's kind of I don't know. The one thing that I think we all can reflect on during our time growing up is that even in times when the power has been out, usually the phone still works. Now, why is that? Why can't they just put the power in the same place as the phones are going, and then the power wouldn't go off all the time? For some odd reason, the phone system stays up a little bit better, and so.
Well, that's likely to be a thing of the past. Thanks to this, we're bringing in technology, and this is going to be so much better. Why? It's technologically going to save us a bunch of time. Well, we're putting ourselves in a more vulnerable position, and I can't get them to talk about that at all. They want this. They want this. They want. We're going to do it.
Yeah. Not only that, is the phone system working? Isn't it going to cost like $1 million or something like that to replace this phone system? I mean, it's very, very expensive to do. Let's see the numbers on this. Show us how you're going to save this amount of money over a given period of time. The phone system works now. Why are you fixing stuff that isn't broken?
Because Cheryl is the liaison to the IT department, to information technology.
Who would love to have this expansion of their little department, because that it's a voice over IP system is probably a fair amount more technical, which is going to take. They're probably going to have to expand. They're probably going to have to add a couple of employees or whatever. I don't know what the situation is with this, but I'm totally for them doing it if it's absolutely necessary. If it isn't necessary, why are we spending money?
For the same reason the city council is getting a new logo. For the same reason the city council, because they supposedly can't replace 8-year-old, 12-year-old filters, is going to build a whole new water plant at the cost of like $50 million. That's a lot of money. The most expensive project in the history of Grants Pass.
Boy, that's another thing that really needs to be, delved into by objective parties, is to get the entire skinny on the whole water plant thing. I think that really.
And this is the part that Cheryl Walker was decrying about the previous plan with the state government and the governor. Do you realize they're going to come down here and look through our books? Oh, no. Well, now that that's been taken care of, she's entirely for the governor coming down here and taking over. What they don't understand is when these two guys are tossed out, the citizens, if we get the right people in there, they're going to investigate the books. And as Cheryl Walker said recently, well, that's, people are saying, well, we've always had some kind of review. We've had an audit. This audit that they're talking about, the previous one didn't see that the fair board, the old fair board, according to the commissioners, they were keeping a duplicate set of books. This auditors did not catch the fact that the fair board folks, Herb Carter, this is according to the commissioners, I don't know, they said that he was signing blank checks. Now you get auditors come in and they don't see that. These auditors from the past did not notice that there was equipment, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment that was now missing. And even Wally Hicks said, that's serious. Well, nobody's going to look into that. So if we've got auditors, and that's just a couple of examples, auditors come in and they do what?
They audit, I guess.
Well, just keep moving along. Nothing to see here. We're going to find out. If we're lucky, we're going to find out. But you can't just do it with one. You're going to need two. So good luck with that.
So even though there's some investment involved in some of these kinds of things, it ends up saving us a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the short term, because we're able to economize a lot on some of these things. And it provides a continuing level of service without having to cut the services or cut employees to accommodate the reduced budget. Even though we talk about the fiscal cliff that is coming the end of June next year, 2017, not 2016, because we still have one more allocation of secure rural schools. We don't hold out much hope that there's going to be any further in the future. Because
Now, Mike, why don't they hold out much hope?
Because nobody's talking about it in Washington. Listen, somebody dropped the bomb that 2017 is it. June of 2017 is the end of the road, and we didn't hear that from Merkley. And I think Walden did alluded to it somehow, but the commissioners keep talking about it like it's a foregone conclusion. And of course, the reasoning is because that raises the urgency or the emergency factor, as it were, and makes it more likely that they will get funding by people wishing it upon themselves.
The thing is, it's a mystery to me, and I don't think this is working. Some people in our county have this thing called a memory. And if you look back over just the last few years, I mean, even if you took the numbers from the Daily Courier that says, 4 years, even if you just did that, and it's much longer, it's all the way back to the year 2000, in fact, 1998, they say this every year. Well, this time it's really the end. Oh, this time it's really, really, really the end. Mm-hmm. They always say it. Now, if this was the first time that they'd said that, I might give it a little bit more credence, but they always say exactly the same thing. Do they think that we don't remember? They must. Is it true this time? I don't know. But once they say it over and over and over and over again, you get people like Mike Jones that might say, you know what? I'm having a tendency not to believe them this time.
Yeah, that ship sailed a long time ago.
Legislative delegation has not introduced anything. The last two that we've received were stuck in the budget bills in some way, and there's no draft legislation to do that. And the fiscal year is going to end October 1st for the federal government. So with nothing out there right now, being an election year, is not going to happen. So we're talking about fiscal cliff. We had the meeting this morning. We had there's some funds that are called Title III money that come in that secure schools that are earmarked for certain things. And that affects every department, not just public safety, because some of that money goes to them. And the ripple effect is very unsettling, because when it affects one department, then they can't assist or provide services to another department that's dependent upon them.
Now, that's a very interesting thing for her to say. That's why I sit through these long blathering meetings, because here she's saying is, well, no, think about that. Title III funds are being pulled, or whatever they are, they're being pulled out of that department, and that's going to have a ripple effect, and Southeast Asia is going to fall. Okay, all of it. It's a dominoes. Here's the thing that they're talking about, though. What they're talking about is Nate Gowran. He comes in and he says, well, we don't have Title III funds anymore, so we're not going to be able to take convicts, the people who are in our jail, and give them a chance to work outdoors and work for free for places like the fairgrounds and for parks and a couple of these other places, raking things up, because it needs to be the most basic of skills. And we are not going to be able to provide you with this free service. Now, I'm not asking whether or not you think that these guys should work off part of their debt to society, but what is actually behind what she's saying is the ripple effect is coming out of no more free labor.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get paid anything, of course not. And so the fairgrounds, now think about this, the fairgrounds is supposed to be entirely independent of the county's money. The fairgrounds is using the county's property, but they're supposed to run this as a separate entity. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now wait a minute. Why are we supplying them, in addition to everything else, with free labor? Well, there's your ripple effect. No matter what she says, there's all these little things that tie together, and you go, this really doesn't add up, but you need to get their number. And we've got their number now, buddy. We know every time they say something where the blather is.
And so there will be some cuts probably this year that maybe a lot of the public will not see, but it does affect our departments and our ability to provide services. And I'm just going to do my little stump speech here.
That's interesting.
Was trashed out in Illinois Valley.
Now, what? Her stump speech. The word stump speech. Okay, maybe I'm being too, pedantic on this. Her stump speech. A stump speech is something that people who are running for office say.
That's right.
Well, there you go. This is her stump speech. Okay, so she's going to talk about the Ivy Library. Here we go.
But it isn't just our library. It's been the high school there. It's been the junior high there. They've had 2 armed robberies of the Dutch brothers in the last month. There have been many other burglaries in the area. And I know people say, well, that's Cape Junction. No, it isn't just Cape Junction, because we have a neighborhood type watch in our neighborhood out in Murphy. And we've had 2 burglaries in the last 4 days that we know about. And we also had an arson. Somebody burned one of the buildings over the high school, just a quarter mile down from my house. So we also know that we have a lot of transients living in the BLM property right up behind us. There have been a lot of petty thefts. Most of those thefts are never reported. So these people who say we don't have a crime problem, we do have a crime problem. Could patrols prevent some of this stuff from happening? Not necessarily.
Well, what?
What? She's left the reservation, people.
What is she doing?
Sandbagging her own case, if you ask me.
She is. Additional patrols, they really wouldn't make a difference. But listen to me anyway. She's straying from the script, buddy.
No.
So how's she going to get herself out of this?
I don't know. I can't wait. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yes, he is. Here we go.
Because you can't patrol every street 24/7, but what it does is when you have a patrol presence in a jail, it's a deterrent, because it's usually the same group of perpetrators. And if you can get that group of perpetrators and break that and bring them in, and then they have to answer to the system. But we can't even get them to the system because we don't have a system. And I was very perturbed in regards to some of the comments that I was seeing on the internet in regards to how the county is failing us. Well, we can only operate on what we have. That's all we can do.
Who's saying that?
And so when people start pointing fingers and saying it's the fault of the sheriff, it's the fault of the commissioners, it's the fault of the mayor, it's the fault of the chief of police, when people start pointing their fingers like that.
Who's saying any of that?
Sorry?
Who's saying any of that? I'm not. She must be hanging out on different pages than I am, because I don't hear anybody talking about any of this stuff. Remember,
this is the same commissioner who said that people say to her, why, you ought to solve this problem. And she says, well, how am I going to do this? Well, I don't care. Just solve it. Nobody's saying that to Cheryl Walker.
And listen, I'm not saying that somebody isn't saying this on the internet, but I'm not seeing any of this. I don't see people griping about the crisis that's existing in the county. If you have somebody who has their house broken into, to them, there's a crime crisis.
Absolutely.
But
we saw that guy at that meeting that we go to about a year ago. That guy was pretty upset. He was still upset even when that mini crime wave moved to an entirely different area. Okay, so he's community, but he's still worried that it's going to affect him somehow.
Yeah, one anecdote is, does not a crisis make? We have to keep a clear head on here. I think there's a lot of good solutions, or certainly things that would mitigate whatever issues that there are in terms of law enforcement in the county. I would submit to you that I don't think the county is interested in any of those things, because if they alleviated the problem without influx of new cash, it sort of defeats the purpose.
Well, okay, you remember I mentioned Herb Carter a couple of minutes ago, the guy that, according to the commissioners, was keeping a separate set of books and also writing. He was involved with the fairgrounds management that was keeping a separate set of books. He was in charge of the fair board and also cutting blank checks. This was the guy that came into the commissioners. See, if you have a memory, then you know who the characters are. He came in and was suggesting that they put listening devices planted around the county. What do you think about that? That would sure keep us safe, wouldn't it? What about drones? What about robot policemen? What about everybody's got to carry their papers with them everywhere they go? There's plenty of ways. I mean, you're a transient because your papers are not in order. It depends on what kind of society in which you want to live, doesn't it?
Well, they don't have.
I actually wrote a thing put on my own Facebook page, and I hit the wrong key and deleted it. But it was midnight, so I didn't write it over again. But my comment was how many cents per thousand are we going to have to pay out of our general fund to take care of some of these things? Because the damages that are out there, we have deductibles. The library has a deductible. Yes, they have insurance, but there's some things that aren't covered. And the county is experiencing these same kinds of things. And the vandalism that's occurring at some of our public facilities is terrible. I'm talking about the schools and the parks. The damage there that we have to pay for to fix, because you don't file an insurance claim on every $500 or $1,000 thing. And so one guy came into the meeting, the Wednesday session over there, and says, well, I don't own property along the river, or something, and this was in reference to another issue, but when people have that kind of an attitude that is not me, that's what we're up against.
Now, that's really interesting.
Yes, it's from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Don't you get that?
Well, the other thing that she's doing is, do you remember when I stood up and I said something about firefighters, the fire guys out in Merlin, and Cheryl recharacterized it, say Dale Matthews just said, same meeting, that all firefighters are pedophiles. No, I didn't. Yeah. I mean, that's lunatic, okay? So she just said, what did she say? That some guy got up and said, well, it's not my responsibility. Here is the guy that she's talking about.
I reject the whole premise of the question. I don't believe that should be on the ballot. I don't own 1 square inch of land around the Rogue River. And why should I be deciding for people that do as to whether the government should take their rights away from them? That if you want to represent those people, ask them the question, and if they say no, then tell the BLM to take a hike. That's what I would think. And I think it's a huge gamble to ask the public, should this be done? There's obviously going to be a percentage of people that say, yes, I'm okay with that. It doesn't belong to me. And if it happens like I've seen, say, property tax levies, there's going to be a certain percentage, maybe not a majority, but a percentage of people that say yes.
So that's what he was talking about. Not what Cheryl just said, Mike.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's but this is Cheryl Walker, and this is the push that they've been on for 20 years or so to get more funding out of the people. And if they can't get more funding out of the people by their will, then they'll get more funding out of the people by having the state come in here, and then ultimately at some point here, this money that is coming, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay. Listen, the guy who was just speaking, Raymond Smith, he made a very good point the other night talking about this specific thing, that if the government, if the state government comes in here and begins to spend money here, And then this would be the perfect catalyst to revive the $2 bill legislation and say, listen, these people down there are costing us money. We need to have a statewide vote as to whether or not $2 per thousand as a minimum is, a legitimate thing to do. And the rest of the state will go, damn right. Those people down there, they're costing us money. We're subsidizing those people. How do you suppose that vote's going to go over?
Well,
I'm guessing that's going to be a
if
landslide.
they would talk with the OSP would tell them, as they've told us, that's not true. And the OSP is quoted by, remember, she says, it's going up like this. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually like this. It is, according to the OSP.
Yeah, let's understand something. The OSP is not offering this opinion to anyone. You have to go and get it from them. They're not an advocate for us in this situation. They're not telling the government establishment that, hey, you guys are wrong about that. You can't lie about that. They're not doing that. They are the government establishment. They just have to, they're charged with the responsibility of keeping accurate figures here. And if you go and get them and you compile the numbers and look at it, you can then see that the case that our local government is making is not true.
Well, let me ask you this question to our viewers. Where the heck are you getting that information? It's hard to get it from the OSP. It's impossible to get it from Cheryl Walker and the commissioners. They're telling you crime is like this and we're running the wheels off of OSP vehicles. You're certainly not going to see it on KJO. You can forget about that. I mean, they're not even playing in the same sport, in the same stadium. And it's not going to be in the Courier. That's it. There's only one place. And it's not our facts and figures. It's the state's facts and figures. We're the only ones telling you this. That's the value of the show. You can't get it anywhere else. And we're very careful. And because when I started off on all this, I was saying, you guys remember, I was saying, well, see, that doesn't sound right. Crime is actually going down. I didn't believe it. But once you look at the state's numbers, and this whole thing about, well, we're using an inordinate amount. No, we're not using an inordinate amount. We're like down here, like third from the end, and the rest of the state is using all of these OSP, Oregon State Police facilities, and we're third least. Really?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
But that doesn't match with what liars and cheaters are telling you.
That's right. And listen, that one point is so important for everybody to know because they're going to keep throwing this at you over and over. And there's going to be a push to rationalize what they're doing. They were hoping to to ask you this question, put this question on the ballot and have the answer to that rationalize their movement. Now they're going to have to come up with the rationale in advance, or they're going to have to make the movement. This is the dangerous thing, is that Cheryl Walker could be planning to do this at any time going forward here. At any time, this board could meet and go, that's it, it's done. We're doing this. And then just announce it later at the weekly business session or something.
SOS told them, and SOS told them, don't go to the public. What's the matter with you? The public says no. We don't want no. We want yes, 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 yes. And so stop going to the public. You keep going to the public for all these times over the last decade. We're the perpetual losers. We at SOS and the commissioners, we're tired of losing. And so let's not go through the Democrat-Republican process. Let's just make an imperial edict. That's why her picture is like this. I didn't have to look for this. This is who she is. Do you like that? That's what you got. There's only two people, really, and there's now a growing number of people who are saying, hey, wait a minute. That water contract doesn't make any sense. Hey, wait a minute. Don't take us down this path. Hey, what are you doing with this logo, you city guys? Hey, wait a minute. And they are not happy. This is why they hate us, because we're not just offering opinion. We do plenty of that, okay? But we also back it up with the facts, and you're not getting them. You just saw. Well, there was a guy there that says it's not really, hey, that's not what he said, is it? It's on video. That's not what he said. That's not what he was talking about. Hey, okay, so take it away for more from Cheryl Walker.
It is us, and we're all going to pay for it. And so, you know, if you hear people talking like that out there, I would hope that you would be willing to say something that we're doing the best we can do with what we have. We don't have money trees, you know, we don't have any treasure chests, we don't have any hidden funds. And you can go look at all these safes that are in the building, there's nothing in them.
Now, you know, this is another thing that it's a smaller thing, but it bothers me. Remember when you and I, Mike, that we had been in that little back room and there's Keith Heck saying this stupid thing. And then he decides that he's going to accuse us of doctoring the tape, which was, of course, totally wrong. He put out an email to all the department heads instructing them to rally the troops behind him to defend his honor, because, of course, he never said such a thing that we have on tape. Even Wally Hicks now says, you don't have it on tape, you don't have it on tape. That's Wally Hicks. Thank you very much, Mr. Elected Legal Counsel. Get out, okay? Now Cheryl is saying, she's telling the Board of Health, she's saying to them, when people question our government and are we doing things right, would you please tell them that everything's fine. You can go back to sleep. There's really nothing to question here. And the lady that's nodding her head so vigorously in the background to everything that Cheryl Walker's saying, that is our Director of Health, Diane Hoover.
And so, you know, lots of times by our silence, and I've done this, to people sit there and they rant and rave and carry on about how it's everybody else's fault, and I've never said anything. I finally say, I'm through saying that. I'm going to tell them, whose fault is it? Look in the mirror. You know, is it you or your neighbor or somebody else? You know, and you know, we can't trust you with the money. And it's like, okay, so we had an animal shelter levy that was passed by the people here in the county, 8 cents a thousand. You can ask anybody. That money is not used for anything but the animal shelter. That's where it goes. You know, so what more can you demonstrate that if it says on the ballot it's going to go to the animal shelter, that's where it goes.
All right. So you know what she's saying here. Well, if you vote for law enforcement and the money goes through the commissioners, then you're going to get nothing but law enforcement. And 10% won't be skimmed off the top. What's the matter with you? That's just totally false. No, it's not. And it's going to go where it's supposed to go.
The commissioners are getting 10% of this levy that was going to the animal shelter, are they not?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So didn't you think that you were putting it into the animals? Well, you are in two different kinds of animals. Yes, you are. So that's just, and they think we have no memory. They specifically said, let's keep where the money is going to go purposely vague. And it was Wally Hicks that just said recently about this 3453, well, I don't want to be too clear. They're saying this in the meeting while the camera is just humming along, recording what they're saying. This is why we don't trust them, because they actually say in a meeting, let's be purposely vague. We may put it there, we may not. We may put it over here. Oh, but if you put the money here, then it may be spent over there. I don't trust them, not going to give them any money at all.
It's going to go to sheriff patrols, that's where it'll go. You know, that's the law. That is the law. And I know there's people that come from other areas that come in here that's not the law in other areas. You know, they've had a different experience. That's their frame of reference. But here, that's not the case. So anyway, I'm through being quiet. But anyway, I just had to say that. But I would hope that if you hear people saying that you would have in your mind how you can, because you all obviously believe in the program you're in, and I'm sure you know some of the limitations that Diane has to deal with in the public health department, things that we can't do simply because we don't have money. And for the fact too that the comments that we receive also about, well, you have a $70 million, $70 million a year budget, why can't you do something with that? Yeah, we do, but only $9 million of it's discretionary. The other millions are all dedicated funds. We can't do a thing with them. So, you know, and even and I know this will come up again too when the budget hearings start in about 6 weeks or so. it'll come up in regards to us taking money from the roads fund to put into the sheriff's department. That may work in other counties because other counties will have $20 or $30 million in their road fund. We don't. We'll probably only finish up with an excess of something maybe $1 million in our road fund this year.
Oh, really?
We've had major culverts go out. We've had a rock slide out there that, you know, by the time that's all through, it's probably going to cost us $1 million.
Oh, really?
You know, it's just
Wow.
conjecture on my part.
It's just conjecture. She'll say anything. And by the way, do you remember what the numbers were? Does anybody remember what the numbers were when they were at the budget hearings about how much, what happened to all those millions and millions and millions? Now there's only 2 million. Have you guys been following that this number's been decreasing and decreasing? Where's that money going? She says this could cost $1 million and we'll only have $1 million left over. What kind of budgeting is this? How come it's only 2 million now? Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Well, that's crazy. Okay, so anyway, a little bit more from Blather Central. Here we go.
But it just keeps sliding. And every time you have to go out there, what was it? They said that they hauled away enough dirt to cover, what
My
was it?
son's doing that job.
Is that
So, yes,
They're covering acres and acres with stuff they're hauling.
thousands of yards.
$1 million.
And it's still sliding. It gets slid again.
It is, it's sliding again. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to keep the roads fund money for. Because if we, you know, somebody's bridge washes out and they call the county and say, you gotta fix the bridge, and I say, no, we transferred that money to another department. That's not gonna work. And so I would hope that, and if you have any questions, you know, call us or call our finance department or anyone, you know, in regards to the money. And there's also, of course, it's an election year, there'll be those out there hopping up and down saying, we need to audit the accounts county.
Hopping up and down, saying we need to audit the accounts, hopping up and down. Well, just go ahead and denigrate the citizens that are running. Oh, you're just hopping up and down. Why, you're just screaming at the top of your lungs. Why, you're the noise that destroys, saying that we ought to look into the books. That's all that you are. That's what they called us before. The noise that destroys. Not even worth listening to us. Roy Lindsay's part of that.
Should we not look into the books?
No, because there's no need. Don't you realize that they're above reproach? They're the imperial court. Why would anybody question them? They're hopping.
Well, I don't know, but I'm hoping that you have some sort of a coup de grace, wrap up on this whole thing.
Well, that could be it. I mean, that's more than enough, isn't it?
I hope so.
Yep. Well, so there you go. That's our show tonight. Where's yours?